Hola there, my beautiful friends. Welcome to this one pot recipe video. Today I'm sharing 3 drastically different dinner ideas, so we've got something for everybody. But without further ado, let's just dive right in. Alright my friends, let's dive into recipe number 1, which is a minestrone soup. You can probably make this soup a million and one different ways, so just see this as a suggestion and not a perfect recipe. Although it ended up absolutely delicious, you do not have to have all of the ingredients to make it so. First things first, we're going to chop up 1 small to medium size cooking onion into very small bits. As you can see, I ran over it with my knife several times to break that down, and now I'm mincing 3 to 4 larger cloves of garlic, setting that aside, washing some fresh Roma tomatoes, drying them, just making sure all of the dirt and the stems are off. You can use canned tomatoes for this recipe, but they were extremely hard to find in Thailand, surprisingly, so I'm using fresh ones instead. If you're using fresh tomatoes like me, let's get them into a hot pot with some olive oil and some salt, and once they start to have a little bit of brown on their skin, we're going to throw in the onion and the garlic. Turning down the heat a bit just so that garlic doesn't burn, seasoning it with more salt and some pepper, and then after a couple minutes, once the onion turns translucent, we are throwing in those carrots. Again, low heat for this. Throw the lid on and let that do its thing for 5 to 7 minutes. At this point, the tomatoes have started to break down. They're not fully broken down yet, but they're getting there. Crushing them with my spoon, seasoning it with some balsamic vinegar, throwing my mushrooms in there, and then throwing some spices, herbs. So 2 tablespoons of an Italian seasoning, 1 teaspoon of a paprika, and some chili to taste. Mixing that all together, crushing up the last remaining tomatoes that are still whole, seasoning it with some more salt to really draw the liquid out of those mushrooms as well. Covered that with a lid and let it do its thing for 5 more minutes before adding 8 cups of water and 1 bouillon cube. If you don't have bouillon cube but you have vegetable stock in like a box, that's totally okay. You can do 4 cups or an entire box of vegetable stock and then 4 cups of water. We're just adding a lot of liquid because we need to cook this pasta. So once that liquid is coming to a boil, we're going to throw in 2 cups of pasta. I'm using the shelled elbow pastas, but adding a couple handfuls of some cabbage, giving that a taste test, adding some more salt just to kind of round everything out, really pull out the flavors, put the lid on, and forgot that I had to add some navy beans. So I added a can of white beans that I rinsed. Once the pasta was finished, I plated myself up a bowl, and that's that. Our minestrone soup. Ready, done, finished. Our first simple 1-pot delicious dinner recipe done. All in all, including the cook time, the prep time, all of that jazz, this recipe took about an hour. If you're feeling a little slow in the kitchen, could be up to an hour and 20 minutes, but I would say an hour is a good estimated time for how long this recipe will take for you to make. There's also lots, so you have leftovers, and obviously the more the pasta sits in those liquid, the more puffed up they will become. So just be aware of that. However, I actually preferred it the next day instead of when it was freshly made because I found the ingredients and the flavors to be really amplified and marinated overnight. Whew. Cooking in this glass kitchen has me sweating, and I'm making warm soups for this video in like 35-degree weather, but I shouldn't complain. This is delicious. Let's dive into recipe number 2, which is a quote-unquote tikka masala. I put tikka in quotes there because this is obviously not traditional. We are veganizing it. Typically, this would be made with yogurt, but I'm using coconut milk to make it vegan. Again, I added 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons worth of masala powder, 1 teaspoon of paprika and chili to taste. Mix that all together and then threw in a block of fried tofu. I couldn't find smoked tofu, but that's what I would recommend for this recipe to add that depth, add that meatiness so would say, to it. And then let's get on to the rest of our chopping and stuff. I did half of a cooking onion, again in very small bits. This is a typically blended recipe. However, I don't have a blender available to me, so just take that into consideration. If you are blending it, you don't have to chop everything as finely as I am. As you saw, 4 to 5 cloves of garlic and about an inch of ginger. And then I just sat that aside and waited about half an hour, 45 minutes before I continued on this recipe because I wanted this tofu to really marinate in our sauce. I got it into a hot, medium-high frying pan with some olive oil and browned it until we got some crispiness and we got some flavor. It really amplifies the spices as well. And then in the same pot, nothing washed, nothing taken out, we're gonna throw in our onion, ginger and garlic, but turning down the heat to very low. We just want those things to marinate, really allow the flavors to become fragrant without being burnt or brown. I also forgot to chop up some tomatoes, so I'm just getting on that while the onion, ginger, and garlic is doing its thing. So I did 4 tomatoes. Again, you can use half a can of crushed tomatoes for this recipe. It's totally up to you. Throwing some more spices into the pan, 1 teaspoon of masala powder, half a teaspoon of paprika, and a touch of chili. Waking up those spices in the heat of the pan, throwing in our tomatoes, and seasoning all of that with a good amount of salt. I'm also adding 1 package of brown sugar. That's all I had available to me, but let's just say 1 heaping tablespoon of brown sugar or cane sugar, which really balances out the boldness of the spices. Throwing in 1 cup of coconut milk and a splash of water, just kind of getting the rest of that sauce that was in our bowl out of there and mixing that together. And then I'm throwing the tofu back in, scraping out all of the oil that was sitting on the bottom of that bowl, mixing that all together, throwing the lid on top, and then allowing all of that to marinate for at least 10 minutes, but I would say up to 25 to 30 minutes just to really get all of those flavors juicy and delicious.
I haven't tried this stuff yet, although I know it's extremely popular not only in Thailand, but many places in Southeast Asia. And this is like 12% alcohol. This entire bottle is basically a bottle of wine, so you could have some fun on this, or be sick. Anyways, let's try this. Oh, it's quite nice. Oh, that's good. Especially mixed in with the soda water. I feel like straight might taste like cough medicine. A bit cough medicine-y, but not bad. It's 13.5% alcohol in this bottle. That is more than most bottles of wine. That's crazy, actually. No wonder it tastes like cough medicine.
As I was waiting, I got a little alcohol in me, started to feel a little saucy, a little warm, just like this curry. But I got some naan bread from a local restaurant just because I didn't feel like making naan bread, and also the point of this video is to make one-pot recipes. If you want to make rice, definitely do so, but you're gonna have to use another pot, and naan bread is just fantastic, and I highly recommend just picking some up on your way home from work. I'm sure you could also find some in a grocery store if you really wanted to, or make it yourself. Do as you will.
And of course, a much needed taste test. The heat kind of sneaks up on you. That pop of sugar comes in right away. The sweetness and acidity from the tomatoes comes in, and then the heat slowly sets in.
A massive thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Start 2024 off right by building yourself a beautiful website to promote your business and make people believe that you're actually a professional, although you're just a weirdo like me, okay? But with a beautiful website, people will think you know what you're doing, and that is a plus in the business world. So choose one of the pre-made templates, make it unique to your business, add your photography, sell your items, and compete in this internet world. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, build your website, and when you're ready to launch it, head to squarespace.com/JuliaAyres to get 10% off of your first purchase of a domain or website. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. All right, hello, recipe number 3. We are here already, and this one is a green Thai curry soup. That's a lot of words to describe this recipe, but it is absolutely flavorful and delicious, and I highly recommend this one. Starting it off by slicing up half of a large onion into strips, peeling 1.5 inches worth of ginger, and then slicing up some galangal, which is a very important root in Thai culture, Thai cuisine, I should say. It is absolutely delicious. However, I've never seen it outside of Thailand. So if you cannot find it, do not worry, just opt it out of this recipe. We finally chopped that 1.5 inches worth of ginger, and now I'm getting on chopping a bunch of garlic, like 6 to 7 cloves of garlic, pushing that aside, and then getting some hot oil into a hot pan and adding 1 package of vegan green curry paste. Typically, curry pastes do have shrimp paste in them, so just look at the recipes, find one that is vegetarian. You could even order some on Amazon. I'm sure that's available. But I let that curry paste sit in the pan for a few minutes before adding our onion, ginger, and garlic. And while that mixture was on the stove marinating for 5 to 8 minutes on low heat, I prepped a bunch of greens. And once the onions were nice and soft, I added half of a box of coconut milk along with 4 cups of water and 1 mushroom bouillon cube. If you do not have a bouillon cube and you have vegetable stock, just replace the water with vegetable stock. You could either do 2 cups of water and 2 cups of vegetable stock, or just all vegetable stock. That's totally up to you and your saltiness preference. I also added 2 tablespoons worth of soy sauce, and now our aromatics with the galangal and some lemongrass stalks. I'm just crushing the stalk with the back of my knife to really break them open and allow the flavors to marinate and infuse into this soup. Then I'm throwing in 4 larger kefir lime leaves, just ripping those up and throwing that into the pot. Like I mentioned before, this kitchen gets so hot, so my camera needed a break from the heat. It just shut off, gave me a temperature warning, but it's okay. It cooled down in the 10 minutes or so that it took for the aromatics to really infuse into the soup. And then I'm throwing in the greens, broccoli and some peas. As you can see, I'm just breaking the tops of those peas off and peeling the fibrous bit off. I did that previously, but I just saved a few for an example of how to do that. Throwing in the more leafy greens, you can use bok choy, choy sum, whatever your heart desires. For this part, you could either just swap it for some cabbage along with a block of tofu. This one was already chopped up in cubes, which I've never seen before, so I just threw the package in, seasoned it with some more salt, covering that with a lid and allowing the greens to get tender. Once they were, I threw in my attempt to make this a one-pot meal, some rice noodles, which I regret doing. Just soak the rice noodles separately. Don't throw them in the soup. Just keep them separate and throw the soup on top of the rice noodles in individual bowls. But these rice noodles were just weird. I don't know if it's the brand that I bought or something. They were still hard yet falling apart, and it was very confusing. All in all, it does not take away from the absolute deliciousness that this broth and the veggies and everything else about this soup was. I don't know what it is about the color green, but it just is so aesthetically pleasing to me. I love a green smoothie, a green juice, a green soup, a green salad. I don't know, it just lights up the soul, reminds me of nature or something.
Oh, it's so hot. I wish the noodle situation was a bit better, but that's my own doing. The soup in and of itself is freaking fantastic. Just do the noodles better than me, okay? That's my tip for this one.
I truly hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you try any of these recipes, please let me know down in the comments or send me a message on Instagram. All of these recipes are available down in the description box, so if you want the written version, click down there. Thank you so much. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you again so very soon. Mwah!